Hi, I'm Tom Seay, and welcome to this episode of Best of America by Horseback. Virginia is a home to a treasure trove of rich history and traditions, and our colonial home at Andora Farm in Virginia is no exception. Every year in the summer, we hold a gathering for our friends and family, as well as the Daniel Boone Days event in the fall, to commemorate and honor these traditions and stories of our past. On this episode, we're showing both of these wonderful events that are dear to us that take place right here in our own yard. We make memories with friends old and new attending the gathering and showcase local guilds, artisans that are working at the Daniel Boone Days. Andora Farm is home to centuries of historic importance. While today it lives as a working farm, it has served various purposes over the years from many walks of life. Culpeper, originally called Fairfax, was surveyed by George Washington when he was a young man and plays an integral role in the American history. It was home to the Culpeper Minutemen, a group of American patriots that fought in the early years of the American Revolution. Included in their ranks was John Jameson, a Culpeper resident and notable Revolutionary War hero known for exposing the treason of Benedict Arnold. A century later, Culpeper and the surrounding areas were a hotspot for the Civil War, sitting right in the middle of the two opposing capitals of Washington, D.C. and Richmond, Virginia. The pastures and hills here where we trail ride today are where thousands of cavalry officers and soldiers camped and lived during the Civil War. Just miles away from Andora Farm, the Battle of Culpeper Courthouse in 1863 took place. This is where Brigadier General George Armstrong Custer led his Michigan Brigade on a mounted charge to capture more than 100 prisoners and 3 artillery pieces. While visiting Andora Farm, you can stop by the Culpeper Museum of History, just down the road, to learn and experience the breadth of historical importance of this wonderful town and its people, as well as the multitude of battlefields in the immediate area. We host these events to show visitors what life was like back then. The struggles they faced as pioneers of early American living paved the way for modern society in our beautiful country. From pottery and quilting to horseshoes and muskets, they had to adapt to the conditions around them, and guests can learn and take part of these traditions right here on the very soil they came from when they visit the farm. You stay tuned, we'll be right back.
On this episode of Best of America by Horseback, we will take you to our home in Culpeper, Virginia, to Tom Seay's Working Cattle and Horse Farm, Andora Farm, for 2 events, the gathering at the farm and the Boone Days event. We'll take guests on trail rides around the farm, enjoy home-cooked banquet-style meals, visit with old friends, and make new ones. Guests will learn how to drive cattle and do team penning. At this year's gathering, we added a new obstacle course that took riders around the farm and through the river. We will show you how they did. And during the Boone Days event, we will share with you the history of the farm that involves Daniel Boone and talk with artists and crafters who came out for the event that is open to the public to see how people worked and lived during the time of Daniel Boone. Every year in the summer, Andora Farm hosts its annual gathering at Tom's farm. When joining us for this event, guests are welcome to a working Virginia cattle and horse farm, where they can join Tom for cattle drives, trail rides, clinics, and other events. Resting at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Culpeper, Virginia, Andora Farm dates all the way back to the mid-1700s. The farmhouse was built in 1758. The gathering is a time for friendship, fellowship, and for the community to come together in its love for nature and horses. Guests can watch or even take part in our weekly team penning practices and try their hand out at competing in the obstacle course. They can fish in the Mountain Run stream that runs through the farm or the farm pond, get fly fishing lessons from Trout Unlimited, and take part in a fishing tournament during the weekend. Along with the banquet meals and breakfast, they can also attend a cowboy church service Sunday morning before heading home. When guests arrive on Friday, they can check in and get settled before taking part in the cattle drive with Tom in the afternoon. Electric hookups, parking, stalls, and a bathhouse are available, as well as primitive camping. One of our most popular activities over the years is going out with Tom to gather the cattle and driving them back to the barn. Once in the arena, guests help cut out the mama cows and babies that will not be used in the team penning events, and then help Tom drive them back out to their pasture. Tom has held team penning events on his farm for over 25 years. Now he hosts weekly team penning practices every Friday night during the season for riders to learn the sport and sharpen their skills. Any age rider in any breed of horse can do team penning. Guests at the Gathering and Boone Days events can learn the basics of team penning and try out their newly learned skills by participating in the team penning practice held Friday night, or they can choose to just relax and watch. Team penning is a fast-paced sport where a team of 3 riders on horseback must separate 3 identified cattle from a herd of 30 and put them into a 16 by 24-foot pen at the opposite end of the arena. The event starts when the announcer calls a number between 0 and 9. If the number is 4, for an example, a rider must go into the herd and try to take out only the 3 cows wearing number 4. The riders must work as a team, helping separate only the number 4 cows out of the herd and not allowing any other numbered cow to go with them. Once all 3 cows with the number 4 are out of the herd, the riders must continue to work as a team to take them to the opposite end of the arena and pen them in the pen. The sport has its roots in the cowboy chore of separating cattle into pens for branding, doctoring, or transport. Guests were taught the basics of this practice by separating the older cows from the herd and the arena before heading into penning practice. Tom announced and coached them as they learned and practiced this sport that requires teamwork with fellow riders and an understanding and bond with their horses that they ride. We've been hosting weekly team penning practices and events for over 25 years here at Andora Farm. If you're interested in joining us for one of these events, you can visit our website, bestofamericabyhorseback.com, for more information. We'd love to see you there. For our team penning schedule, visit us on Facebook at Andora Farm. In addition to the cattle drives and trail rides, we added a new obstacle course where prizes are given to the top point earners, and it was a big hit with our guests. Riders started off in the arena, where they earned points for the way they mounted their horse. They were welcome to mount from the ground or use the mounting steps. Then they had to ride into the pen and back their horse straight out. Next, they had to open and close the gate from horseback as they left the arena. Participants then set out across the farm, where different obstacles were set up along the trail. The first challenge along the trail was to take a rope off of a fence post and drag a small cedar tree on the rope behind the horse a short distance, then put the rope back on the marked fence post. This proved to be a tricky challenge for nearly everyone. Next, riders had to navigate up several steps while going between the distractions of helium balloons and a cage full of chickens. It surprised us, but most riders had no problem at all with the balloons or the chickens. As riders made their way around the trail, they encountered several log obstacles they had to step over that increased in size as they progressed. Next was a stationary wooden bridge. The final challenge was to traverse down a steep switchback and cross the river, then pass through the herd of cattle and cross the river a second time on the way back to the starting point. A bonus stop was added at the end, where riders could earn extra points for riding their horse out into the pond and casting out a fishing line from horseback. Everyone did their best, and this year's winner was Bunny Joseph and her horse Dickens. They took home the gold. In the afternoon, guests can learn to fly fish and compete in a fishing tournament. Here at Andora Farm, you have the option of fishing from our private pond or in the Mountain Run stream that runs through the middle of the farm. Mountain Run is a small tributary of the Rappahannock River and feeds the Pelham Reservoir and Mountain Run Lake. Guests can try their hand at catching bluegill, fall fish, catfish, trout, and more. Saturday evening, guests join us for a banquet dinner and a keynote speech and autographs from Tom Seay, host of Best of America by Horseback. After dinner, guests can relax by the campfire where they can tell stories, meet old friends, and make new ones. On Sunday morning, a breakfast is served, followed by a cowboy church service and a final trail ride. To learn more about the gathering and team pinning events and the Boone Days events, or to reserve your spot for these events next year, you can go to bestofamericabyhorseback.com for more information. Every year in the fall, Andora Farm and Best of America by Horseback host an annual Boone Days event at Andora Farm, which commemorates early American history and Daniel Boone. Friends and family from all over come to experience a weekend with a slice of life from historic colonial Virginia, where American frontiersman Daniel Boone once lived and worked. Local artists and craftsmen showcase their work at booths and demonstrations for the guests to watch, enjoy, and take part in. This year, on the second annual Boone Days event, we hosted a blacksmith, quilters, spinners and weavers, a potter, a soap maker, cast iron cooks, fur trappers, mountain men, a history professor, and a special guest author who wrote a children's book about Daniel Boone himself were in attendance. Daniel Boone is an American icon, best known for his trailblazing frontiersman days in the exploration and settlement of Kentucky. Boone lived and worked tobacco fields on what is present-day Andora Farm and the surrounding areas. Boone worked as a teamster, hauling tobacco to the port of Fredericksburg for shipment to England. He would go on to blaze the way of the Wilderness Road, adventuring through the Cumberland Gap, a narrow pass through the ridge of the Cumberland Mountains and Appalachian Mountains, connecting Virginia to Kentucky. By using the skill and knowledge he learned from his earlier years in hunting and trapping, Boone was able to travel through these areas and mark the trail that more than 200,000 Americans would cross over by the end of the 18th century, securing his place in American history books and changing the course of the country forever. Boone was immortalized in his own lifetime as an American legend, and a mythology of his exploits has survived in American history and popular culture ever since. When we return, we'll talk with local craftsmen and artists that joined us for this year's event at Boone Days and learn how they would have worked and lived in Daniel Boone's time. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Local artisans and craftsmen in the Daniel Boone Days event at Andora Farm gave guests a look at how early Americans lived during the lifetime of Daniel Boone. Today, we can easily buy most anything we need from local stores or online. In colonial America, however, most of these same products would have to be made by hand, with knowledge passed down between generations. Mark Boak, a blacksmith with the Central Virginia's Blacksmith Guild, set up a traditional blacksmith shop to teach our guests about the ancient art of blacksmithing and metallurgy.
The anvil has how many uses?
The main use of the anvil is simply to provide a solid, hard surface to squash the metal between your hammer and that surface. And the anvil is really the main blacksmith tool beside the forge.
A member of the Culpeper Quilters Guild, Lynn Garber, showed us how quilts would be made from extra fabrics to conserve and use materials available. People of colonial America had to use everything they had to survive.
They didn't waste anything, and that would be something they would work on by the fire in the wintertime.
The Guild's purpose is to foster respect and education in quilting and to continue the craft in the local community with those who love the art. Representatives from the Fredericksburg Spinners and Weavers Guild brought their skills and equipment to present the age-old methods of spinning yarn and weaving. Spinning is the process of spinning natural fibers using a wheel to create yarns and threads that will be used in weaving or knitting.
You can learn to spin in a couple of minutes, but then you can take a lifetime learning how to control it.
Weaving is the art of layering yarns or threads to create continuous lengths of fabric. In colonial America, women often had to create their own garments and fabrics for use in the household. The Fredericksburg Spinners and Weavers Guild provides a supportive environment for persons interested in weaving, spinning, knitting, and other fiber arts. Anne Marie Wright showed us how traditional pottery was made using a potter's wheel. A foot pump was used to turn a flywheel, which then spins the pottery wheel head. This action is known as throwing or shaping, and various wares were cut and formed on them.
So my clay is centered on the wheel. And I need to add just enough water so I can work it, but not so much to make my clay body weak.
Potter's wheels were common throughout the Old World, and handmade pottery was prevalent in early American history. A local soap maker was there and had a selection of handmade soaps.
Hi, I'm Dana Raby with Little Black Dog Soap Company. We're in Henrico, Virginia. All of our soaps are handmade in-house.
In colonial America, soaps were made by hand using raw materials. Lye had to be created by separating or leaching it from wood ash collected slowly over time. Leftover fats from cooking and fragrant oils will also be saved until enough materials were stored to make a batch of soap. The Old Dominion Iron Chefs attended Daniel Boone Days event and cooked some classic recipes in all cast iron pots and pans.
Our goal is to promote the art of Dutch oven cooking, cast iron cooking, trying to make a renaissance in the old ways of the way your grandmother and mother cooked.
Cast iron pots and pans and Dutch ovens were sturdy and would last for generations. It is still a popular way of cooking across America and the world today. Art Fulch represented the Virginia Trapping Association during the weekend with a display of different traps and furs that are used and hunted in Virginia.
We have about 11 fur bearers in the state of Virginia. We trap for a number of reasons, primarily for population control, for disease control, to keep the predator and the prey populations in balance.
Dr. Joel C. Tate, a retired professor, gave a lecture on the ancient American Indian village site located right here on Andora Farm.
These are the most telltale arrowheads around here. This one right here would probably go way on back to the archaic times. We got axes going back 8,000 years, found right down the road here, Remington, Virginia. We got, everybody wants to make this into a tomahawk. It's a hoe probably. It could be a small hatchet or a hoe. I think it was probably used like this.
The Mountain Men joined us once again this year to show guests how frontiersmen like Daniel Boone lived in the untamed wilderness of early America. Guests could visit their encampment during the trail ride or take a free hayride back to the ancient Indian village site nearby. They held musket firing demos and demonstrated how life was for those who braved the outdoors and country of the old world.
We've had a lot of fun recreating tradition here this weekend. Hopefully some of the public have had a chance to learn a few things that maybe they had never heard about before, all important parts of American history.
Long hunters were explorers and hunters who would go on long journeys into the American frontier wilderness for up to 6 months at a time, often in small groups. The information about local wildlife and trails they gathered were critical to the early success of settling Tennessee and Kentucky to the west. Finally, guests enjoyed a banquet dinner served by our staff wearing traditional colonial garb, and afterwards listened to a speech about Daniel Boone by local author Candace Ransom.
I know that the property that I'm standing on was where Daniel Boone spent some time. I also know that he went through Virginia with his family when he was young to move to North Carolina.
Ransom has written over 100 books, including a children's book about Daniel Boone in her History Maker Bio series. For more information on events at Andora Farm in Culpeper, Virginia, you can call 540-829-9555 or visit our Facebook page, Andora Farm.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Best of America by Horseback. I'd like to invite you to join us on future shows and ride with us. If you'd like to see where we're going and maybe join us, visit our website, bestofamericabyhorseback.com, and maybe you can be on Best of America by Horseback. I'm Tom Seay. Thank you so much for watching.